Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and it is finally time to do my August 2024 reading roundup. I have put off this video for a bit. I've been really busy. A lot of things have been going on, so I had to put off this video a little bit, but here we are. We are going to go through all of these books that I read. I read 16 books in the month of August. 2 of them are books that are nonfiction books I'm not going to talk about here because I'm mainly focused on fiction on this channel. So I wanted to make sure just to talk about the fiction stuff instead of going into the nonfiction. But we got a lot of books that we went through in the month of August, and I have quite the stack to talk about. So first off, the first book that I read in the month of August was The Hunt for Eden Stars, Beacon Hills Book 1 by DJ Williams. And this unfortunately was a book I did not really love. I didn't really like much of it at all because it was a tough read to get through. It was not what I thought it was going to be. It was billed as like an adventure story with a globe-trotting element. And while like the setting was a lot of fun, there was a lot of good elements to it, at the end of the day, it was just not that interesting. And it kind of didn't hold my attention the way I feel like it should have, and really was more of a like boarding school book story than an adventure globe-trotting type story. So I felt kind of disappointed by that, and it just was not one of my favorite reads of August for sure, unfortunately. The next book I read during the month of August was The Berenstein Bears and the School Scandal Sheet by Stan and Jan Berenstein. Now, I have a whole review up on my channel of this book, and I just have to say, this book was really pretty problematic. It had a lot of elements in it that I just cannot recommend it. And I don't think that this one is a really good example of what a good Berenstein Bears big chapter book can be. So unfortunately, this one was a big miss for me. You can watch my review for all the info about that because I went into depth about it and about all the things. So if you really want to know more, go check out that review. The next book I read was a really cute little board book. Since spooky season was right around the corner, I started picking up some books at stores to read, and this one was really cute. The book is A Haunted Ghost Tour in Tennessee by Louise Martin. It had super great illustrations. It was a lot of fun. They actually have ones of each of the different states for this same style of book. So it's like the same kind of art, the same kind of storyline, but it's with different locations and different states. And I really loved this book. I thought it was so much fun. It's like the perfect little spooky season book, but it's not scary at all. It's just like a lot of fun and like really about geography and the different places in a town. Perfect for that toddler, baby age, just reading books to them. It was a lot of fun. The next book I read was one of my favorites of the month, and that was Mysterious, book number 5, Trapped in the Horror Dome by Matt McMahon. This series has been a ton of fun. I've enjoyed every single one of them up to this point, and this one was the best yet. It was so much fun to read. It was like Alien for kids, and it had so many great moments of action and just suspense. And you're so scared throughout the whole thing. More not out of the like jump scares or like, ooh, this is a really spooky situation, but more like, oh my goodness, are they going to get out of this? Like the dread and the ominous feeling of this one is so good. And there's so much action in this book. I really, really loved it. It's the best of the Mysterious series, in my opinion, and we have got to get more of this series. Right now, I don't see that there's another Mysterious yet on the horizon, so go pick these up, read them. I want more Mysterious, so please go read these books. The next book was another just such a good book. There were so many good books I read this month, and this one was another one of my favorites. It's the second Spine Tinglers book I read, and this was book number 5, Check It Out and Die by M.T. Coffin, which something I did not talk about in this review for this book was how this book comes for Goosebumps. Like right on the cover it says, you'll get more than Goosebumps when you read this book. And throughout the book, there are these little nods to Goosebumps books where it is like taking down Goosebumps and making fun of Goosebumps and just being like, this book is so much edgier than a Goosebumps book. It's gonna scare you more than a Goosebumps book. And there's so many obvious allusions to Goosebumps. I loved it. It was so funny. But on top of all that, on top of those Easter eggs, this was such a good book. It is scary. It has a great plot twist. It has great ideas. It's a really just a great setup that I am not going to spoil here. When you find out the twist of this book, you sit there and you're like, oh, that's so genius. I can't believe someone's never done that before. It was so much fun. I have loved all the Spine Tinglers books I've read. I've only read 2, but hey, I've read all of them so far that I've loved all of them that I've read so far. And it's been so much fun reading these. They're very different than a Goosebumps. I feel like they're a tiny bit edgier and a little more intense, and I like that quite a bit. So if you're looking for something else besides Goosebumps to read that's a 90s middle grade spooky book throwback, check out Spine Tinglers. Check out this one for sure. This was a great back to school kind of read too. It kind of had all those back to school vibes, so definitely check this one out. The next book I read though, I did not like this book. The more I've thought about it, the less I have liked it. And that is Goosebumps number 21, Go Eat Worms by R.L. Stine. I really did not like this book. It was weird. It was kind of dumb. The ending just left you a little bit like, what is happening? Why is this happening? There's no explanation. I just did not like it. Also, the main character is so awful to follow. I just kept thinking, this is a really terrible character to follow, and I don't really like reading about them because they're just annoying to people and just kind of awful. Awful is the word. So I don't really love this one, not gonna lie. And then the next book I read, though, was another really fun book to read. This was kind of like a laid back, fun read. I read this one actually for the Murder, She Wrote readathon that Storm Reads was putting on. And this one is Murder, She Wrote, Dying to Retire by Jessica Fletcher and Donald Bain. So I do love a good murder mystery every now and again, especially a cozy mystery, especially a Murder, She Wrote mystery. I love Murder, She Wrote. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's such a fun show, and the books are a lot of fun too, and just kind of continue with those characters and just the vibes of the cozy mystery. And this one was a lot of fun. I will say I was able to guess who the murderer was pretty easily. It wasn't that difficult to guess, but I just enjoyed being in Florida on the beach with Jessica Fletcher and enjoying that ride. It was a lot of fun. It had a lot of fun, good mysteries, and there were some good red herrings that if I hadn't guessed who it was and was oh, I know it's this, then the red herrings would have been a really great add-on to the storyline. But I figured out who it was pretty quick. But anyways, this was still a fun book to read. If you like cozy mysteries, give these a read. If you've ever watched Murder, She Wrote and you liked that show, check out the books. They're a lot of fun. And then I read another board book. This one was called You're My Little Baby Boo by Nicola Edwards. And this was such another fun, cute little board book that is perfect for the toddler age, perfect for spooky season. It was really cute, had great illustrations, a fun little story that's pretty it's one of those board books that has a really great grasp of how to be very succinct with your words and just say exactly the right thing to make it a perfect little story. So this book was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And then I also read another board book called Teeny Tiny Ghost by Rachel Matson. And this was another super cute little board book. It was about a little tiny ghost that meets a little tiny mouse, and it's so great. I loved it. I thought, oh, this is another really great book for toddlers in the spooky season. It's just super cute. It's not scary or anything like that. It's just a fun, spooky season story, and I thought was really great. Definitely recommend if you have toddlers or little kids in that, that 3 and under range. This will be a great book for them. And then at the end of the month, I went on my Goosebumps reading binge because I knew the newest Goosebumps book was coming out from R.L. Stine. So I decided to go ahead and read up on some Goosebumps. The first one I read was number 10, The Ghost Next Door. Now, this one is not exactly the mummy books that I will come to in a moment. But this one I picked because my wife and I decided to start Halloween-a-thon. Kelsey over at Slime and Slashers has started Halloween-a-thon this year, and there's a lot of different prompts you can do, and we decided to start it early because we thought, well, we just want to extend the spooky season, make it a lot of fun, so let's do it early. So we rolled the dice and we landed on read a story with a ghost or a haunting or a haunted house in it, and this was the book I chose, Goosebumps number 10, The Ghost Next Door. And y'all, this book was so sad. I have a whole review of this book up on the channel, so definitely go check that out. But this book was so sad. I will not lie. I got a little teary-eyed reading this book, and I just felt like so forlorn while I was reading it because what the characters go through and what is happening around them. I just thought, oh no, this is so sad. I did not anticipate this. Like, you can pretty early on guess what's the twist of this book, but this book is not about the twist. This book is about the journey that the characters are going on. And if you are looking for a great character development story in a Goosebumps book, this is the one. And then I started reading the Mummy books from Goosebumps. I wanted to read like every mummy story there was. So I started with number 5, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb. And this one, I really liked it. I can see how some people don't. It's a little bit of a slow burn. It's an early on Goosebumps book where R.L. Stine was kind of figuring out, what do I want to do with these Goosebumps? How do I want to organize these? How do I want to structure them? What kind of characters am I going to have? What's the humor going to be like? So it's a little different than other Goosebumps books, but it was so much fun to me because I love Egypt. So I'm a little biased because I do love Egypt stories. I love mummy stories. And this one was a lot of fun. It definitely introduces like the idea of mummies into the Goosebumps universe pretty well. And just a great story. If you don't mind it being a little slow, definitely check this one out. And then I also read Return of the Mummy. This is book number 23 in the series. And I will say this one, reading it back to back with The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, it was a little derivative and kind of just more of the same. Like, it wasn't bad at all. It was a great story. It concludes the same characters as Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, which was a lot of fun to revisit the same characters. And it definitely was a good sequel that way, but it's just more of the same. Like, if you liked the first one, you'll probably like this one. I felt like they're just very, very similar. I will say it was about this book, after I finished reading this one, that I realized, I don't know if R.L. Stine knows what to do with mummies exactly. He knows how to set the atmosphere. He knows how to get it going. But I don't think he knows what to do with mummies. And to be fair, I don't think a lot of writers know what to do with mummies. I have not really come across a mummy story that uses the mummy very, very well. It more is usually about the atmosphere and the exploration pieces of the story with Egypt and pyramids and camels and deserts and sand, etc. It's not always so much about the actual mummy itself. And this story was kind of like that. There's definitely some good twists. There's some fun things that happen. There's some really intense action scenes that were a lot of fun to read, but it was just more of the same. So it wasn't bad. It wasn't my favorite mummy story, which we'll come to in a second, but it was good. And then I skipped up to Goosebumps Series 2000 to read book number 16, The Mummy Walks by R.L. Stine. Now, okay, I have not done a review on this book yet because I have been trying to figure out how do I even talk about this book without spoiling this book. This book was one of the most intriguing Goosebumps books I've ever read. I don't think it's my favorite because it's not very Goosebumpsy. It's very, very different from a regular Goosebumps book, but it was so intriguing. From the very first moments, I thought, what is happening? What is going on? This is a great premise and a great hook. And I just had to keep reading. This was one of those books where you just feel like, I have to keep reading because I have to know about this. I need to know the answer to the questions I have. And you do get all the answers to all your questions. That I very much appreciated. But I will say the journey was very interesting. And I would also say this book once again proves R.L. Stine doesn't know what to do with mummies, but he sure knows how to read a Tom Clancy book and make this the most Tom Clancy Goosebumps book you've ever read. That was so intriguing to me and made this book so different from any other Goosebumps book I've ever read. And then the last book of the month that I read was Goosebumps House of Shivers, Night of the Living Mummy by R.L. Stine. I was able to get this one a little early because I went to a Books A Million and they had copies out on the shelf and I found it early, so that was really awesome before it came out officially. So I got to read it ahead of time and that was a lot of fun. But this book, this was great. I feel like in this book, R.L. Stine figured out what to do with a mummy. And I will just say, if you have not read this book or looked at this book, do not read the back of this book. Don't read descriptions of it. Don't do it because it will spoil something really huge that happens actually like halfway through the book. After I read it, I was so glad that I had not looked at the back because I realized that is a giant spoiler that's on the back. And I'm so glad I did not read that. So don't read the back of this book. Just go into it knowing this is a really great mummy story from the Goosebumps world. I have a review of this one up on the channel, so definitely check that out. It's a spoiler-free review, so there's no spoilers. I worked really hard to make sure that it would not have anything that would give stuff away in it. But this book was a lot of fun and definitely had some great moments. I will say, one twist I figured out pretty early on, and if you're paying attention, you could probably piece it together based on just how R.L. Stine is. But otherwise, this one's a lot of fun and does some things you do not expect, which I thought was great. It also is the best use of parts in any Goosebumps book I've read so far, except for one, which I'll come to next month because I read it in September. But this book had a great use of parts. It was a lot of fun, lots of action, lots of mystery, lots of danger, lots of moments where you're wondering what is going to happen, how are these characters going to get out of this? Are these characters going to get out of this? So great. I enjoyed it so much. So those are all the books I read for the month of August 2024. It was a big, busy month of books. I actually read more books than I thought I was going to read in August because for a minute there, I was getting towards a tiny bit of a slump because of that first Hunt for Eden Star book. That book took me so long to read. It was like 3 weeks of reading, trying to get through that thing. I had gotten it from the library and I had to have it renewed from the library because I took so long to read it. It just was really difficult to read. So all that to say, this was a really fun month of reading. I really enjoyed it. And until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.